Okay, welcome back to the Bayta YouTube channel, and today it's got something slightly different. You might recognize Michael Truckle, so the first guest that I had on the podcast. Today I'm starting a new series and it's called Careers In. Now, Careers In is going to be about a bunch of different industries. Today we've got finance, but in the future, hopefully I can do it on consulting, marketing, startups in general, and just sort of give you guys advice on a particular industry you're interested in. So I'll let Michael introduce himself again, but if you want to check him out more, so more of his background and story, check out the first podcast. But yeah, take it away.
So I'm Michael Truckle. I've studied finance at Warwick Uni. I'm going to be an incoming trader at an American bulge bracket bank. I've had a very unorthodox way into banking, although I've known for a long time it's what I want to do. So fear not, anything where you're worrying about the typical application route, hopefully I can debug some of the myths and get around it.
Awesome. So the structure today is we're going to do the approach for a typical university student. So we'll start with first years, second years, third years, and breaking down the processes even more in depth. So hopefully you can stick around with us. And at the end, we have a Q&A section where we've got some of your most asked questions, and Michael's going to do his best to answer them. So. Okay, so yeah, let's start on the first section, which is going to be you're a first year coming into university. What do you do if you want to get involved with finance? And I suppose maybe give it a little bit of background of what finance is. It's quite broad, and discovering your sort of interest into it.
Definitely. So I knew I wanted to go into finance, that whole sort of corporate scene. And I think the main part of first year and what I definitely focused on is knowing what area of finance. I think for me personally, I always wanted to be a trader. But the biggest problem I faced was when a trader asked me, well, what do you think traders do? And that's when you realise, gosh, actually, I need to look into what an investment banker does, what a consultant does, what someone in law does. And even within banking now, what does someone in tech do and ops? So first year really focused on that as much as I could.
So it's about discovering almost what you want, and I think the way you do that is just by trying a bunch of different things, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So then let's go on to more sort of practical advice. The typical route for first years going into finance is going to be applying for spring weeks. Do you want to explain what they are and maybe the sort of application process going into it?
Yeah, definitely. So spring weeks are 1 week internships done during the Easter holidays, and then you get a very broad generic view into what a bank does, how they operate, what areas you can apply to. And the whole aim is over 5 days the bank gets to see what you're like, and if they like you and you like them, you often get invited back for a summer internship. So really, really useful.
And the summer internship usually will be in the second year?
Yeah.
So you come back for that. So I suppose let's talk about the application process first before we dive into sort of day-to-day life in a spring week. So what is the best way for a first year, whatever discipline they're in, to get onto a spring week?
Yeah, so I think the main thing for spring weeks is absolutely understanding the application process. You're going to have to you've got to make your CV, you've got to tailor cover letters, and we'll get more into that later. Then later on, you're going to have possibly online tests. So it could be maths, it could be reading, it could be what we call situational judgment, where what would you do in certain situations. After that, you then have an array of either an online or telephone interviews or face-to-face. And then that's normally it for spring weeks. If you get through all of that, fortunately, you'll hopefully get a position.
Yeah. And did you have to when you were applying, did you do a lot of practice for these spring weeks, like the tests and the cover letters, things like that? How did you get the support that you needed?
Yeah, definitely. So I found out from doing a few originally at the beginning, which providers did the test. So there's like 3 main providers of these online tests. I found out who they were. To my knowledge, and hopefully they still are, SHL, Connexa, and Talent Q.
Yeah.
So straight away, Googled the 3 of them, said, practice tests, cracked on through them. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing in terms of the online test stage is I actually did a lot of the tests back to back. So I'd apply to 5 places. Some will give you 2 days to do the test, some will give you a week. And try and find a time, whichever suits all of them, normally as soon as possible, where you can do all the tests together.
Yeah.
Because some of them use the same providers, so the same questions come up, and you obviously will know it instantly. And if not, your mind is in that state of like cracking on with maths. You're already like having a rolling head start.
Yeah. So I suppose we've got a few tips about sort of getting involved, and it's more so you talked to me about something quality. What's the sort of the relationship here between quantity and quality of applications, that is.
Yes, loads of people ask me, is it best to have quality, have a few high quality applications and submit them, or do, blast them out, just scattergun, loads of applications, but where you've got the same cover letter or you don't know much about each firm? For me personally, I think you've got to do both, and it's always really difficult doing both, but they're both so important. The way each bank hires can be completely different, so it's hard to know what's the golden secret. But I think for me personally, I just took 3 weeks of my life out from going out and all that socialising in freshers.
All the first year stuff.
I'd done freshers. You're almost ready for a break by that point. And I just did 2 applications a day, and after 2 or 3 weeks, you'll get 30 or 40 done, and from there you'll be fine.
Yeah. So I suppose let's skip forward a little bit. You've got your internship secured. You've got your email confirmation. Now, when you're here, how do you make use of the environment that you're in? How do you get the most out of it? And also reflect, because it might not be for you, or it might be something you love. How do you move forward? Yeah,
so I think obviously really it's a great position to be in. It helps massively, and as soon as you're in that position, you really are a step ahead from everyone else. But you've got to realise, as great as it is, as much of a challenge as you've been through, you can't fool yourself. When you're there, if you're not enjoying it, you've got to think, I know it's been tough, it's been a long process, but this just isn't for me. And that's absolutely fine. That's actually the purpose of these programmes. So whilst it seems like everyone probably has already traded before, they've wanted to be an investment banker since they were 12 and all of that, there are a lot of people who don't know if it's necessarily for them. So you've got to, I think the most important thing is not to kid yourself. Because in these jobs full time, which we'll get onto, you could be doing 12, 14-hour days. You've got to love what you're doing.
Yeah. So then, making most of the people that you're there, so how do you stay engaged with your colleagues around you, whether it's other interns or people higher above? Like, how do you stay connected with them?
I think the main thing is, and I really stress this, is staying in touch with your other students on these programs, because obviously HR are massively important. They play a really big role in arranging these programs. You're going to learn a lot from the professionals too, but it's great to meet like-minded students who have been through the same process as you, they know the drill, and you're all going to be in a similar boat together. So for interns, I always use like Facebook and WhatsApp, and normally group chats get set up, which are brilliant because you're all going to cross paths again at other networking events or different internships. They're really, really important. For staff, I always used to use LinkedIn. I actually try and get people's email addresses now, because there's so many times where you add them on LinkedIn, and for obvious reasons they're really busy and don't check it too often. If you get their email address, it's just a much more direct route. And if you want them on LinkedIn, you can find them on their name later. So always try and go at email address first.
Perfect. So I suppose this sort of covers the first year element. We're going to go on to summer internships now. Okay, so we're going on to the section which is going to be sort of the second stage. So these are looking at usually your second year of university, where you're having a summer internship at a bank or other finance company. And we're going to be sort of asking Michael about the experience in the application process again, whether you've leveraged a spring week or not. So it would be good to get your perspective on, if you have had a spring week, how can you use that to, if you converted or if you hadn't converted, how can you use that to benefit you? And then if you haven't had that previous experience, what sort of angle should you come from?
Yeah, definitely. So this is why the spring weeks give you a massive step up. If you can get onto a spring week, you're going to be far ahead. If you can convert it, brilliant news. You're in a fantastic position. A key note is not to get complacent. Obviously, you've got massive steps ahead of you, but you're still doing really well. If you've done a spring and you haven't converted it, and that's absolutely fine, because some banks don't give you the option to convert it, so it's not a problem. Having that experience on your CV is so important though. So I wouldn't worry. I see a lot of students who get really disheartened by not converting a spring week. It's not the end of the world. There's plenty of firms out there, and it's still incredible to have on your CV. However, the problem is, what if you haven't done a spring week? Well, I don't think it holds you back. You're just not quite as far ahead as everyone else, but there's certainly a lot of opportunity. If you're going into it and you haven't had a spring week, I think the most important thing is to network. And I say that because each firm have very different cultures. And I don't want to be cliche and you read about it, but they are very different. And if you can speak to someone in the firm and ask them the questions you would struggle on, like, how is Bank A different from Bank B? What makes you successful? By asking the professionals what they've done, you can get a really good insight and you can give great answers. So I'd say meet people in the firm, get their understanding and their knowledge, and then try and replicate that during your interviews.
Awesome. And so is the application process, let's say you've got to your interviews, is it similar to Spring Weeks for most companies, do you think?
Yeah, so it's similar, but normally you have one more stage, and that stage will be to have an assessment centre at the end.
Yeah.
So that will comprise of, could be group exercises, more interviews. Sometimes you'll get your online test put in front of you again to make sure you do it, which is a massive thing for a lot of students. So the tasks do vary, but it's to get a well-rounded picture of who you are.
Yeah. So the next sort of step forward would be during your summer internship. What do you kind of expect during this time? How long is it going to be for? And again, similar to Spring Weeks, how do you make the most out of it?
Yeah, so for the summer internship, for a lot of you, it'll be 10 weeks long. And this is so important because you don't want to go all guns blazing in the first week, doing every hour under the sun, and then you burn out. And likewise, you don't want to start until week 8 and then you get fired up and you're thinking, oh my God, I need to get a full-time offer. The most important thing is just to be consistent. You've got to be yourself. And again, I know before I did my summer internship, it sounded cliche, but you've just got to be there and try and be that person who's willing to help others more than anyone else. I think it's so important because even though you've got the summer internship, there's a lot to learn. And even if it's getting teas and coffees, which I think is no problem with at all, as long as you're adding value more than the next person, you're going to be liked, so they're going to want you. So
you think it's more intentions as well? Like, not necessarily you're getting everything right, but the intention is there to help others.
Definitely. I think attitude is key. There's going to be times where you don't understand something, you are going to get criticised. And don't get me wrong, there are absolutely epic times where you nail something and it's brilliant. But just having the attitude that you want to learn, even on a bad day, you want to be there, is so important.
Awesome. So what else can we sort of expect out of the summer internship process? What's it like? And then how can you maximize the value that you get from it? So the best chances of maybe converting this firm?
Yeah, definitely. So the reality is you are being watched. People do assess you throughout 10 weeks. You don't know about it though. Your staff, your colleagues, HR, different events, people will assess what you're like. And they're not looking for the perfect person. I think they just want someone who is authentic and that, they do make mistakes. However, if it all goes well, you like your team, they like you, and you like what you're doing, then you can get a full-time offer afterwards. And obviously that's the best scenario because you go into a last year already having a job secured. So it's really useful. A bit like the spring week, it's almost like steps going up. You do the spring to get to the summer and then the summer to get onto the full-time role.
And then it's, it's not to get disheartened if you don't convert, but you need to really think about, is this for you, right? So it's also a reflection process. Like a lot of companies have trial periods, and that trial period is not just for the company, it's for you as well, to see if you match up to them. So this is a time where you need to reflect on yourself, I think, as well. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. For me, during my summer internship, for example, it's so competitive to get there, and that's fantastic when you get on it. But you'd be surprised. There's a lot of students who are still figuring it out, and that's okay. When you have a really tough day at work, there's nothing to blame by you rethinking, is this for me? And you've had a really tough moment. Is this what I want to do? So you've definitely got to reflect on, is this what I really enjoy? And you've also got to look at the people because there's so many finance firms out there which all could do the same sort of role, whether it's trading or treasury or insurance, but do you like the people? And it's not even necessarily about the culture. Is it just that your manager is going to be a good laugh? They're going to be strict? Do you like them being strict? Maybe you do. So it's about managing that.
Finding out what makes you tick.
Absolutely, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, we're going to go on to the next section. Okay, so we're on the sort of final step. So you're in your third year of university, or perhaps you've even already graduated. And again, I think I want to come at it as the same angle as the summer. So let's talk about it. If you've got your spring week, you've got a summer, and you've converted. And then maybe from the opposite end, so that you actually haven't done any of the before.
Okay.
What's the best way that in our third year we can sort of show the other things that we've been up to, or the best way to position ourselves to get a graduate role at a big bank or a finance company?
Yeah, definitely. So when you're applying for grad programs, if you've already got an internship under your belt, that's really useful. Obviously, if you've converted it, you're in a great place. If you haven't, having a big bank on your CV is going to be really useful anyway, because other banks will know sort of similar processes. There'll be a lot of firms which really like that, so it adds massive value. The question here about what if you haven't done that, again, I wouldn't panic too much. So if you're applying for grad roles, The most important thing is hopefully you've been proactive and you've done some sort of experience. And then you can play on the angle that, okay, you haven't done banking yet, but that's because you've tried marketing and you've tried law. And actually, now that you think banking's for you, you can bring skills no other intern could bring because they haven't been in a solicitor's office and they haven't been to a startup. So you've really got to play on the skills you can bring there. I think the other thing as a grad is there's lots of grad programs out there, but there's no harm in doing a summer internship as well. Increasingly, a lot of banks are giving summer internships to graduates because it is like a 3-month notice period. They like you, do you like them? If so, fire away, stay on the grad program. If not, have a rethink and maybe apply for something different. So it definitely isn't a step back to do a summer internship. I've seen a lot of graduates on them. I think it's a great program to do.
Yeah. So I suppose talking about maybe cover letters, CVs, and just applications in general, by this sort of time, so first year you're going quantity, you're applying to a bunch of different places.
Yeah.
Do you think by this time you should kind of narrow it down slightly and focus more on the quality of your applications that you're putting out? Or is it still a quantity game, or is it dependent?
Yeah, I think the main thing is you've got to prioritise where you really want to go to. I think then once you really want to be able to put someone's name in your cover letter, you want to tailor the cover letter to them specifically. What sets that bank apart from another bank and why do you like that as well? I would definitely suggest speaking to an intern so they know the programme. The last thing you want to do, and I see this so often, is say that you like the rotational nature of a program and then it turns out when you're there you don't rotate.
Yeah.
Because that's just as bad as the cliche you apply to one bank with another bank's name on your cover letter. So you've got to know what it entails, and I think that's it's seriously important. So quality, however, being realistic for me anyway, I think you've got to do more than 5 applications. I think it really is a measure of how much you want it. If you really want it, try and do 10, 20, even 30 if you include some asset managers and hedge funds. Really push for it, because I think every experience, especially in London or any major city, is going to be a fantastic experience anyway.
Perfect. So I suppose can we talk a little bit more about just the world of finance in general, what it was like working there, because you've just finished your summer internship, what it was like working there, and maybe the kind of different roles. So for the people that are watching, sort of maybe back office finance compared to front, like client facing roles, what sort of distinctions do we have in the different roles that we have?
Definitely. So I think first and foremost, banks are absolutely huge. I never realised it until this summer. We are talking massive. Some of them have got 250,000 employees over the world. So for where I'm from, that's 4 of my towns stuck together, and I don't even know everyone in my town. It's massive. So that's a huge amount of people. Now you've got to really think, I think first and foremost, do I want to have interaction with clients or not? Some people really like it. They think, brilliant, you're going to make friendships, relationships, partnerships across different firms, brilliant. Some people say it's stressful. I'm going to have someone phoning me up saying I need X, Y, and Z by this time this afternoon. Can I deal with that kind of pressure? So you've got to really think, is that something you're interested in? Aside from that, so then that sort of separates your front office and back office. You've also got to think lifestyle as well. If you want to go into a role like trading, you've got to get up early. We're talking get up sort of 5, half 5 in the morning, be in the office for maybe 6, half 6. But you get to leave early at 5, half 5, so you get your evenings for dinners and seeing friends and family. Something more investment banking wise, you go in later, 9 or 10, but you've got to be a night owl. And a lot of uni students, I'm sure, are great at this, where you stay up 10 o'clock, midnight, 3 a.m, and if you love that, brilliant.
It comes back to the last thing you just said, that you have to love it though. And that's why I think whether it's a spring, summer, or even just trying a graduate program, you've got to test these things to see if you enjoy them.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so we're going to go into the Q&A section now, and Michael's posted on his LinkedIn and I posted on my social media to ask us some questions about careers in finance. So I think Michael has a couple questions that sort of commonly crop up with him as well that have been asked. So
first and foremost, how do you find out about these internships? When they open, when they close? Is there some sort of way to know about all of them? It's tricky. So I think mainly you've got to write down all the firms you're thinking of applying to and look at their individual careers pages, because if you're going to apply, you've got to go through them anyway. There's definitely no harm in emailing HR and saying when do they open. It looks keen, it looks eager, so definitely do that. I would definitely look for tips on some certain websites. So Rate My Placement, for example, they have loads of reviews on how people found their internships, real holistic ideas of what they got up to, what they're exposed to. The other one would be the Bright Network. they tell you they give you an email summary of when internships are closing. So I wouldn't rely on it by any means because you want to be early doors, but it means you'll get in before it closes. Fantastic. And they give you commercial awareness updates. So if you find you've not read the news in the week and you've got an interview tomorrow, you check a Bright Network email, you'll be up to speed pretty quickly.
Perfect. And I would just like to add on, different from working in startups or smaller stage companies, as Michael said, there is a formal process, like there is a careers page and things like that.
Yeah.
If there's not, inquire, but most of the time when you're applying to large banks and things like that, there is a formal process that you need to stick by.
Absolutely.
Cool. So, next question.
I think the other key question people ask, and I see it a lot, which I'd love to cover, is the key CV mistakes. I get loads of people ask me to check the CVs. So there's a few things which I think are so important to just check when you're applying. So has your CV got your address on it? If it has, I would definitely get rid of it. There's the idea of postcode bias and that certain areas might be liked. Now, I don't know if that's true, but it wastes space. I would often replace it with your LinkedIn URL. Okay. You can customize it to something short. So linkedin.com/Bailey Harrod, and it's nice and concise. Add that in as well. Bullet points for work experience. Try and make them one line. Have a keyword there like communicated, worked in a team, added value, presented or research, something which is a transferable skill. The most important area, and so important, do not neglect, is the bottom, the skills and awards. As it always gets asked, if I'm sitting with someone 12 hours a day, you've got to be someone you're going to enjoy talking to. You've got to like them. They've got to be interesting. So what have you done different from the other person sitting next to you? Have you won any sports? Have you played any instruments? Have you done any academic research? What makes you different?
Awesome. And I suppose one thing I'd like to add on there is that when you talked about those keywords in the CV as well, is the keywords, but they also have quantifiable things you've achieved with them. So communicated with X amount of people to achieve Y percentage efficiency, or something like that. Give them quantifiable results so they can see what you're doing, rather than being ambiguous. Make it easy for them to see what you've done.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Okay, so I think Michael has one last question he wants to talk about and something to help you guys out. So
yeah, I always get asked how to properly network on LinkedIn, how to get people to apply, how to be effective at it. I think the most important thing when you want to connect with someone, even if it's friends or family, let alone someone you really aspire to, when you send an invite, you have the option to personalise it, and that is key. There's no harm in sending a message saying, "Dear Bailey, I was inspired by this," or I knew you from that, because they're so much more inclined to start accepting you. The other thing, when you do send messages, do try and keep them concise. Everyone's busy in today's day and age. And the other thing I'd say, personally for me, is don't be afraid to chase people up. If they don't reply in a couple of weeks, obviously be polite, but say, "Can I just check, did you get this message?" And reiterate how eager you are to be in touch, and I think that will go a long way.
Perfect. And what we're going to do for you guys as well is we're going to film a little video that Michael's going to talk a little bit more in depth about networking. And if you want that from him, I'm going to leave his LinkedIn below. Just click on it, send him a message, and he'll send you a link to the video, or unless we posted it on his LinkedIn. But just find out on Michael's LinkedIn, and then that will be good. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on today, Michael.
Pleasure.
I hope that you guys have taken away something. Feel free to message Michael. He's open about CV help, cover letters, things like that. And let me know what other careers and industries you'd be interested in. If you have any people in consulting, marketing, as I said, or maybe unconventional industries. I want this to be a holistic view of the career of careers. So anyone can do it. So whether it's medicine or whatever it might be. So thank you very much for coming on.
Perfect.
And I'll see you guys soon.
Good luck.